People really like to hate on Jack Derrida and his idea of deconstruction online. If you look up videos explaining deconstruction or talking about Derrida, you're probably going to find a lot of comments that are hating on him, calling his reasoning inherently flawed, or saying that he doesn't make sense. So who was he? What is deconstruction? And why does it spark controversy and hate even today? Well, Jack Derrida was born in 1930 in Algeria to a Jewish family. Now, Algeria at that time was majority Muslim, very anti-Semitic, and basically Derrida was on the outs. Regardless, he was still privileged in that he was able to receive a good education, and he eventually developed the idea of deconstruction to analyze language and writing. However, it developed, and the heart of deconstruction turned into questioning institutions and any set way of thinking. Now, all of this was influenced in part by Heidegger, Ferdinand de Saussure, and Nietzsche. Nietzsche did say that the highest values devaluate themselves, which is pretty on mark. He plants that if you're set on a truth, you need to examine it and consider its opposite. Could it at all be valid? People think that he was against logic and reasoning since he said to question truth, when really what he was trying to do was expand the base of knowledge. If you're set on believing one truth and one way of thinking, you're going to be blinded against other truths and ways of thinking that could still be valid just because they exist outside of what you're already set on. However, I do understand that it can be taken too far. Even though I do believe in non-essentialism and the idea that everything exists in relevance to everything else around it, there's still certain prototypes of concepts that I don't think can be completely discarded or deconstructed. Questioning everything's essence, though, is extremely important, especially questioning ideas that seem polarized or Manichaean, black and white. Life isn't as neatly divided, and thinking that it is dangerous. It makes us believe that there have to be straight answers when there aren't, because life is complicated and often can't be fit into neatly labeled boxes or explained in a way that is gratifying. A lot of the criticism that Derrida receives now is exactly what he expected while he was alive. Thinking that the heart of deconstruction is throwing away reason, when in reality it's just about questioning the ideas that you shape your life around, by considering that their opposites might actually be valid. You can then discard that opposite if, upon examination, you consider that it is unreasonable. Even though it has some things in common with Dadaism, which also questioned set truths, deconstruction doesn't throw reasoning completely out of the table. There's still logic. It's not the most important thing to get rid of it. I've always liked the idea of questioning systems and supposed logic that is set in stone. No logic should be set in stone, it should be susceptible to change. Western institutions were made centered around the straight white man, and generalized what worked for them as what works for everyone, which is clearly not the case. In medicine, it was the white male body that was studied, examined, and used as a base for research. Now, because of deconstruction, this was questioned, and more research was done into women's health and how different diseases impact them as opposed to how they impact men. There's still a lot of work to be done there, and women are still believed less by doctors because they're thought of being oversensitive and overdramatic, when in reality women often downplay their symptoms and their discomfort. Even today, we see a lot of doctors that are not well informed on the differences between how different maladies and conditions show up on dark versus light skin. This very year, I saw a news article about a student in London that made a comprehensive visual aid on the differences between skin abnormalities in white versus dark skin. And that should not be a novelty at this point. I mean, come on. The student's name is Malone Mukwende, and you should definitely check him out. Now, that's just the field of medicine. Deconstruction questions the validity of the base used in institutions of every field. It makes way for interpretations other than the problematic old school ones. The whole idea was to get those systems that you already think you know, you understand, and are built perfectly, and then say, hey, maybe they're not. Maybe there's something that's missing. What would the other approach be like? What would an opposite approach be like? This is the way that progress is made. And regardless of whether or not you like Jack Derrida, his idea of deconstruction played a really important role in getting to the progressive and more liberal way of thinking that is popular now. He even inspired people like Judith Butler, which makes a lot of sense considering that before, sex was viewed pretty much through a heterosexual lens, and that was a system that also had to be questioned and changed to make room for LGBT politics and philosophy. I think it's important to learn about what Derrida actually did, what he was trying to accomplish, what his main goal was with deconstruction, and that it wasn't just anti-logic. It's just questioning the systems that were set in place at that time, which were deeply flawed. I don't think there's a lot of arguments there. So yeah, the moral of the story is just that deconstruction isn't a bad thing, and it's really good to question everything.